I were like,
Thanks, Kate.
What is going on?
Craziness.
Switch it back and forth.
is that one coming on?
Okay. I babysit in Cleveland. Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna be late.
No, I'm off. Come out today.
Oh, you get source like, is it what you want to see on the screen? Want to see
I want to see everybody.
on the screen?
Yes.
Then try these.
I don't think it is. Oh, yeah, I think it's, wait, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't. No.
You could be right.
No, which is-
Dryer.
You might not be able to,
So how long are you doing this? I don't really.
That
know.
might not be
I
an
went to
option.
Virginia Sunday and then I had to-
Yeah, it is an option, because that's the way we see it in mission meetings.
oh, the camera, let's see it, but the,
It's council view, yeah.
You need to make sure you take this thing. Let's see what's
Another day in paradise,
Well,
huh?
that gives us half a view.
where it
this
does
is
hurt.
recorded.
I was like, okay, because apparently, like, your elbow, you can use all of your range of
You
motion.
probably
Basically,
want
you have to
the
stop.
camera only.
Always happens when you don't turn it off.
That's not fun.
I've heard a lot of great things
Push the
about Dr.
button
Brown.
this way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's really good.
And he's really good looking guy.
really good.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Okay, we're live.
Fun Easter plans?
He's great. Yeah, he should be a vaccinator.
No,
Yeah.
Mike,
We're not doing this in nurse. And so, yeah.
I don't know that you're allowed, you might have to push
This
the
is like the
screen
second
TV
time.
button.
Probably not as much as we ought to, but yeah, we've been.
Some CCs. We joined for the pool.
I've never used this thing before, I don't know.
And the family stuff.
Oh, he did Gate Street News.
The last one, this most recent one, yeah.
My wife Kathy, she, that's the summer was, we never get there. It's like, I know there's somewhere right by, and we love it, but we don't go.
She did really well with it.
Figure it out.
we are taping.
First one.
Yeah, we are recording live.
Oh. So we should stop talking about our Easter and summer plans then?
Yeah.
Okay.
What the
Let's
heck?
start with our pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm unconvinced. Do you have to push one of these? Stream TV? Record? Hope you find one both record and stream.
Ms. Myers, will you please call the roll?
Jennifer Ashburn.
Here.
Mary Ann Baxter.
Here.
Abby Bemis.
Here.
Diane Corso.
Here.
Adriana Guerra.
Here.
Billy Hill. David Miller.
Here.
Mark Pfeiffer.
Here.
Tim Schwanger.
Here.
Elizabeth Semler.
Here.
Tom Schra.
Here.
Jennifer Torres.
Here.
Levada Wilson.
Here.
Mike Zuloff.
Here.
Next on our agenda are the minutes from our March 27th meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
A second.
Second, Mary Ann. Any corrections needed to the minutes? All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Very good. Next would be public comment. Seeing no public. Moving right into the agenda. So first up, we are revisiting two items identified at the last meeting that we needed further explanation on. So I would pass that over to you, Mr. Hastings.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'll start with the plat commissioner. That is Ohio Revised Code 735.17. That is the person that approves the platting to require all streets and alleys to be the proper width and coterminous with adjoining streets and alleys. So the plat commissioner has to sign the plat before it can go to the county recorder's office. The default plat commissioner, if we were not a charter city, would be the service director, according to 735.17. Our charter designates the city manager as the plat commissioner. Anybody has any questions about that? The other one was the unencumbered balance. Both John and I consulted with our finance director, who could not be here tonight. And so I hope you're not going to too deep of it. But the unencumbered balance is slightly different than the cash balance. Every single contract that the city engages in requires 3 signatures. In our city, the city manager by charter is the party that signs a contract. The law director asserts that the contract meets all legal requirements, and the finance director asserts that we have enough money to pay our obligations under that contract. Once that contract is fully signed, then some of our money is encumbered by that contract. A lot of contracts, and some of these contracts can last years, so the unencumbered balance is our cash balance minus the monies that have already been encumbered by our contractual obligations.
I would just add, all the different funds, we have sewer fund, water fund, street, general fund, and basically the money gets appropriated at the budget process towards the end of the year, then finalized at the beginning of the year. So just to make an example, if we had $1 million in the street fund that was appropriated at the beginning of the year in the budget, and we spent $900,000 of that $1 million, and we had encumbered for whatever project $50,000, the $50,000 that wasn't spent would return to the street fund and remain in the street fund. All of the funds have to stay exactly where they're appropriated. So sewer stays sewer, water stays water. So that's basically in addition to what Mr. Hastings said.
Any further questions or clarification?
I have one, Madam Chair. So it's my understanding, based on me following the city commission meetings, we cannot use water and sewer funds on anything besides water and sewer. We can't move that money over into the general fund for something else, but we can move general fund money into the water and sewer fund. Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, although that's tricky because the general fund is supported by taxpayers. The water and sewer fund is supported by ratepayers, those entities that pay their water and sewer bills. And those are not the same entities, same people. So for the general fund to make a gift to the water and sewer fund, I mean, that's possible, but that's transferring taxpayer-supported money over to ratepayer-supported money.
Do the water and sewer fund, for example, ever get like a charge back to cover a share of administrative expenses or something like that?
There is a complicated formula. I don't know it off the top of my head, but yes, some administrative services are charged to the water and sewer fund because the administrative services support the water and sewer fund.
So with that additional clarification, for section 34, interest in revisiting or anticipated changes, that section of the charter? Okay. Seeing none, section 55, unencumbered balances.
It's 54.
Thank you. 54. Okay, seeing none. So then we will continue at section 55. Again, our goal right now is to identify sections that we don't anticipate recommending changes to the commission around, and then identifying those that we'd like to revisit for further discussion. So we'll keep working through the list. Section 55, Grants Limited. Mr. Miller.
Just a question of, I didn't come across a definition of public utility. I think that obviously gas and electric, but cable and phone, and how far does that go? And I presume it doesn't include like rail service or things like that as a public utility, but it could maybe or not? Just, that's the question.
I'm not sure I understood your question, so.
But yeah, I didn't see a definition of public utility, so I don't know how many cable companies are considered a public utility, or if they are.
Cable companies are not public utilities.
That's what I wondered. They're in the
Public
right of way.
utilities are like light, electricity, gas. Of course, I could be wrong about that. I'm very old. But when I first started out, they didn't start off as public utilities because they're not provided to everybody. The cable company decides what areas that they get to go to. Normal public utilities like the electric company doesn't decide which side of the city it's going to service.
So, yeah, I just wanted to understand, because there's lots of wires in the public right-of-way or in easements, and I wanted to understand that they're not public utilities, and therefore do not fall into this section.
Yeah, I don't think those would be limited by this section.
Okay. Any further questions?
Madam Chair, water would be included then as well? So it'd be gas, electric, water, sewer.
Yeah, gas, electric, water are all public utilities. Sewers,
And impacted by the next several sections then. Okay. Hearing no anticipated changes to section 55, section 56. Okay, seeing none. Section 57. Okay. Section 58, right of purchase. Okay. Section 59, extension by annexation. Section 60, right of regulation. Mr. Zullo.
If the chair doesn't mind, I had a question about the period of grants. Back 56, I didn't quite keep up, sorry.
Yeah.
Is anyone aware of any case in which that 20-year constraint has caused a problem? Because I think, and would a encroachment easement that is granted indefinitely violate that?
the answer to that question is no.
No?
There's no limitation on easements.
Okay, because it's an easement.
I'm sorry?
Because it's an easement.
Right.
But it's to operate a public utility. Oh, okay, so this, I see now that such grant refers to the grant above, and it's not any grant, it's a specific grant to a public utility.
Correct. That
Got it,
has the
okay.
limitation, right. For example, if we chose to contract with a private entity to supply the water to the city of Sandusky, we do not. Our water public utility is owned by the public.
This prohibits
City.
us from tying up the city for 100 years or something.
Exactly.
Thank you. Understood.
Very good. Resuming at section 61, forfeitures. good. Section 62 and 63 have been repealed. Section 64, general provisions. Very good. Section 67, state laws to apply. Seems like a fitting one.
That's 65.
Oh.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Section 66, recall petitions.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Schwanger.
can we, I'd like to move this to our further discussion list if we can, based on the fact that this is pretty cumbersome, and I did take a look at the Ohio Revised Code, and it may be a better system if we kind of go with the Ohio Revised Code on at least part of the recall process.
Would you include section 67 or?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, so section 67 and 66 to revisit, section 68 as well. We're leaving off there.
I think that, yeah, that probably doesn't need to be discussed, the election. Ballots probably not need to be counted.
Probably. Okay, so we have marked 66 and 67 to revisit, 68. Seeing no concern there. 69, ballots. Seeing no concern there. Section 70, filling of vacancies. Section 71, counting of the votes. Good. Section 72, effect of resignations.
Madam Chairman, we're just going too fast. I have to ask a question to slow it down.
Oh, sure.
The effective resignations in 72, do I read that to understand that if the entire commission resigned, they name their replacements before they go? I mean, is that how I should read that? I'm not sure I have a better way. It just seemed curious that if you're being recalled, so you resign, you get to appoint your replacement, and is that collectively if they're all gone? There's a one-for-one, pick your replacement, or the panel as a whole gets a new slate? It seemed peculiar.
Yeah, as I read this, it refers to a very hopefully unique situation where all members of the commission resign at the same time. And they want, this designates that they must appoint a temporary replacement so that we have a commission. And there still be a recall election. And if they are recalled, then the temporary, there'll be a new election for new commissioners at the same election. And the new commissioners would replace the temporary commissioners, is how I read this section.
But the resigned commissioners can't then subsequently be reelected because they're out for 2 years or something?
Well, actually, no, it goes on to say, the final phrase, that if the recall petition fails, then the old commissioners would remain in office as if they had not resigned.
Curious, that's all.
Which I guess if they really wanted to, they could resign again. I don't know. But that's what, this applies only where there's a recall pending, if they wish to resign while there's a recall election.
Fine, that's how I read it too, I just thought it was odd.
Mr. Chairman.
Choose a lot.
So I was reading this to mean that in the event that you say two, that whoever might be nominated by whom, I'm not sure, but you're not nominating Smith. Okay, so let's say Albert and Bob are out, right? You don't nominate, Charles and Don, Charles to replace Albert and Don to replace Bob. It's more like you're not supposed to be that specific, right? So you're not replacing any particular, that's kind of one of the meanings or one of the constructions of that statement. Or am I wrong?
Well, yeah, it's not an individual designation. The commission as a whole has to appoint its replacements.
Right, and I thought that's what they were trying to make specific there, or explicit there.
And then if the recall petition fails, then the old commissioners go
Of
back
course, yeah.
go back to their seats and their replacements are rejected. But that's different than the replacements, or maybe different than the replacements that may be elected. So there's 3 names in play for every seat.
Thank you.
Any further questions about these sections? Okay. So I have us having left off at section 73, miscellaneous provisions. Any questions or anticipated changes? Section 74, already repealed. Section 75, general laws to apply. Section 76, audit and appraisal.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Miller?
I'm not sure what a sinking fund trustee is, but I couldn't find any reference to it in the reference section S18, so I'm looking for clarification.
I also found that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Orzak or Mr. Hastings?
Yeah, I wish our finance director were here. I do not know who the City Board of Sinking Fund trustees are either. I've never met with them.
Quite the
But
title.
we can put that one for next meeting if you like.
Sure.
There are notes on that from the 5 years ago. And it says that it was actually abolished and they just never took it out. But, I mean, I have it here on what they discussed on it last 5 years ago.
Okay.
So it didn't go to the commission?
That's not a.
But there's really no way to clean that up short of doing a charter amendment, and therefore it's just going to linger, stay unchanged indefinitely, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it that way, or if that has been abolished, then the provision just has no effect. I mean, we'll get to other ones that, For example, we have charter provisions that conflict with the Ohio Constitution that have no effect. They're still in our charter.
Okay, so we have that noted to revisit with Ms. Reader when she's here. Section 77, ordinances continued in force. Section 78, continuance of present officers. Section 79, continuance of contracts and vested rights. Good. Section 80, oath of office. Section 81, already repealed. Section 82, amendment of charter.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Schwanner.
I'd like to move that to our follow-up list if we can.
Very good. Section 83, saving clause. Section 84, when charter takes effect. Section 85, when amendments take effect. Section 86, residency requirement.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Miller?
should I presume this is the kind of example you were referring to, Mr.
Yes,
Hastings?
yeah, no, in 2010, the Ohio Supreme Court declared that the law passed by the Ohio legislature, which prohibits cities from having a residency requirement, is constitutional. No city may then therefore enforce a residency requirement.
So is there any reason to let stand in our charter something that is struck down by?
Well, it depends on whether we want a residency requirement. If we do, that law can be changed by a simple majority vote in the Ohio legislature. And if the Ohio legislature chose to do that, then our charter would
We'll
take
be
effect.
back in business.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Zillow?
Right, so if we left it here, the effect would be that if it would have no effect right now because it wouldn't be legal, but it would, again, take effect if it became legal in a future
Became
time.
legal again, it would take effect. With the proviso, because no ex post facto laws, those who don't live in the city.
Of course.
At the
Right,
time
right.
the Ohio law got changed, would still be allowed to work in the city, but new employees would have to comply.
All right. Some of these requirements, though, are, say how things shall be, but don't say what you do about it. If someone's not in compliance.
Well, I know what the city of Cleveland did back when they were able to enforce their charter provision. They would fire those people.
Right. Well, I know we had, scandals in the newspapers. Someone, or maybe, I think I recall more than one someone many years ago, and I'm not sure what the outcome was, but it was, like shocking this is, but everybody was left with, okay, what do we do about it, you know? So maybe if we want this, then we should somehow need to deal with what do you do when they're not compliant? Just a thought.
That would be again, that would be a policy decision made by the then management of the city.
Well, I mean, wouldn't due process require that you can't arbitrarily punish or someone without the benefit of a law or ordinance, right?
Well, we have a charter provision.
Okay, that would be enough.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
would be enough.
Right.
Any interest in further discussion here,
I'm good.
Madam Chair, my only concern is that I've heard over time, people say, well, they have to live in the city because they may not be knowledgeable regarding the revised code. And so then it kind of creates a sense of angst between why is XYZ not required to move to where have you. That would be the only benefit that I would see in cleaning, changing, or otherwise, is just being able to communicate clearly what's going on. Furthermore, in addition, question, if the law did change, couldn't it happen that it would be put into an employment contract if the person in question was a contract employee or, you know, a public servant, so to speak?
Yeah, we don't have any, well, with the exception of the city manager, I don't think we have any contracts with our employees.
Okay, so none of the executive leadership or membership,
And that
management team.
term in a contract would be void under Ohio law.
Currently, yes,
Currently.
but if the law changed, that
Correct.
could be a way to deal with that instead
Could be a
of
way
just
to deal with
allowing
that.
it to stand in.
Yeah, the only thing that would concern me is if this were put on the ballot to repeal it, and the voters, for whatever reason, decided that they didn't want to repeal it, and that got a lot of publicity. We've only made the matter worse, that people now think that everybody has to live and work in the city.
Absolutely.
I have I don't know if it's a shocking historical example in the 1912 constitutional amendments to the Ohio Constitution, where the Home Rule Amendment got its source. There was also an attempt to repeal the provision in the Ohio Constitution that forbade African Americans and women from voting.
Right.
And that lost. The voters of Ohio decided that they did not want to change that part of the Ohio Constitution. That didn't mean people couldn't vote. The federal Constitution controlled that issue.
Madam Chair, is there any way that we could list in the charter that it refers back to the Ohio Revised Code? Because if you just read this, then you're confused. But then, is there any way that we could let people know that we're reflecting back upon the Ohio Revised Code without, like, going to a vote with that?
You know, there's something we could do without making it a charter amendment. I think we could put a parenthetical here. It just says unenforceable per Ohio Revised Code.
And the year, and the code and the year?
Yeah.
I think that would be
Just
super
put that
helpful.
in our published versions of the charter.
Sounds good to me.
I think that'd be super helpful.
No, that's a good suggestion.
And Section 87, review of charter.
You know, someone accused us of engaging in, not our fault, we're appointed for this, of engaging in a colossal waste of time. It's sort of like we've got, okay, this is important stuff, be assured, but we've got, 4 or 5 city staff here for multiple meetings. One might ask, why every 5 years? Why not some process when somebody thinks we need to do something instead of automatically, going through which is proving to be sort of a lengthy process, even kind of reviewing every word and sentence and paragraph in this thing. So I think it's a fair question, is this necessary every 5 years? And should there be a process if, in 3 or 4 years, if we think we need to do something, should there be a process for doing that instead? Maybe instead of every 5 years, have a process for proposing a charter review. Just thought I'd bring it up. A lot of staff time here.
Madam Chairman, I will point out that there are 2 other processes for charter amendment.
Sure.
There's petition, and the city commission at any time, by a 2/3 majority vote, put a matter up to the electors of the city to change the charter.
Well, that's a good point. So what made me think about this is it's going around social media these days about knocking down fences. Various versions of this parable that basically you encounter a fence or a gate or something in the woods, don't knock it down until you know what it's for, right? So just because you don't understand why it's there doesn't mean, and it's an inconvenience, or you don't know what the purpose is. If there's a gate there, be sure you understand what you're doing before you do it. Some of us here have a lot of experience. I hope if anyone proposes a change, we thoroughly understand the implications of that. That's why I'm not advocating for changing this or maybe even getting rid of the provision of charter review. I'm just raising the question and wondered if anybody else has had similar thoughts of, if no one sees an urgent need to change it, why are we going through such an extensive exercise? Not taking a position, just thinking that that's a fair question.
Thoughts from other committee members? For one, kind of reminds me of your general health, right? Try to schedule the regular checkup rather than just when that emergent pain comes up. Never know what might catch that way.
And this is kind of a way to pull the general sentiment, at least of those designated to represent the community. Are there things that are subcurrents that maybe the city administration isn't aware of or hasn't reached the level of people contacting their individual commissioners to try to get 2/3 of them to act on something? Yeah, it seems like a good hygiene process to me, but.
And truly, in your work week, who has time to sit down and go through this word by word? It's tough. I think it's like spring cleaning almost. You got to take the time to do it.
Yeah. Thank you for the comments. With that, we would be entering the section of the agenda for old business. Any items of old business to bring forward? Very good. Items of new business. The first thing here, included with your materials, was this handout of sections that we have identified through our earlier meetings. Kathy will have to correct me, but I jotted down 5 additions today. I might be slightly off, 5 or 6.
I only have three. I have the parenthetical explanation added, but I didn't think that was something you could do. And then Ms. Rieger was going to do an explanation of 76, but the three revisited were 66, 67, and 82. Were there any additions that anybody else saw identified?
No, you're correct. That's also what I had.
Leave us at 20.
Okay. Thank you. So if we're following a similar cadence and goals as to the former charter review, I know we discussed at the beginning that we'd be looking at the last two meetings to be finalizing language of suggested changes and taking a final vote. So that leaves 3 meetings in between that we've identified, and this list to get through for further discussion. I went through and kind of sectioned some related issues, things that we might want similar city staff to be there for conversation, or any external resources. So my ask of the committee right now is, are there any items here that you see you'd like additional resources provided for the discussion? So should certain staff members be there, or you saw in earlier charter committees that they had external presentations from some university staff? Is there anything from the sections that we've identified that you know you'd like to have some additional consultation while we revisit those, so that we can kind of plan ahead on which is tackled when over these next 3 meetings?
Madam Chair, on issue 25 with the expenditures, I would be really interested to know what the language was on the ballot. It went down by 68%, and that's really important for our city, I believe. And I wonder if people don't understand, what was the feel that we so readily disapproved of making that change in the budget? Was it the monetary amount? Was it the wording? Was it the lack of communication? Because that's a pretty big issue to me.
I think that's a very good point. That does handcuff the city in very significant. We can't buy a taser without going through legislative process, which is expensive. Takes a lot of work.
I thought your example of an undercover car was a great example.
Oh, yeah, that's another example.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to do stuff like that. Most cities put that in the capable hands of their legislative body. I think we told you that the state of Ohio is 77,250. We don't have to go that high. I know in the city of Beechwood, while I was there, it started at 15,000, then went up to 25,000, but that's something that the city council could make a decision on. And that's, I think, where that.
What was the amount on the budget, on the ballot last time? Do you remember?
That was 48.
Yeah, the notes look like maybe 50.
25,000.
25,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Madam Chair,
Mr. Schwanger?
we can try that 25,000 again, but if it got beat by 56%, 57%, 50,000 is going to be probably beat up pretty bad too, but.
The threshold.
I see this 50,000 back in 2020
They,
on these notes.
So the committee recommended 50,000. The commission cut it in half to 25,000. 25 was what was presented to the electors.
Madam Chair, just as a question, is it ever plausible or make sense to put in the charter language that would say that, or even go to the voters really, to say that it would be based on whatever for example, this is set by the director of the Ohio Department of Commerce? So
Yep,
would it ever
that would be
make
preferable to what we have
sense
now, you're right.
to put that, because that's what the Ohio Revised Code would indicate as well.
Yeah, you could put that in there. That would take away the power of the commission to lower that number.
Okay, that would be the downside.
I think, again, this is something I think is best led to the commission level of decision-making, because charters are very difficult to change.
So what would your recommendation then be that would
To
allow
repeal
that to
it.
happen, to just repeal the whole thing?
Yeah. Or have a section, we have a lot of discussions on this, to, as you suggested, to adopt the Ohio Revised Code, but then add, the commission has the power to reduce that amount if it so desires.
Sounds like when we revisit this discussion, it might be helpful for us to understand how other communities approach that language, whether it's included, just so that there's options for if people wanted to
Right.
suggest a
Yeah,
change.
and even though Ohio Revised Code doesn't put a number on it.
No.
It has, it's an administrative function for that number to go up, or I presume could go down if the commissioner so decides.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Zullo.
So how would the commission change that number? Because let's say it's 25 and the commission says, okay, we're, yeah, okay, I think I understand. So,
They do it by ordinance.
right, they're not constraining themselves, they're constraining the administration.
Right.
Right, so. But what would happen if you just, tell me, you said something I couldn't hear, what would happen if you just struck the whole thing and
If you
let?
repealed the whole thing, there is still an argument under home rule that our commission can do what it wants. Set a number.
Well, how is that different than setting it at 25 and saying they can make it lower? What if commission wants to make it higher? Should they not be able to do that also?
There is a home rule argument. If this provision did not exist in our charter,
Right,
it does. There is an argument that could be made that home rule would allow a city to pick a bigger number.
well, you could micromanage it a little bit and say, okay, we'll follow the state code, except that city commission may halve it or double it, but put some constraints, but allow them to increase it or decrease it, but not without limit, because, right, if 4 crazy commissioners said we're going to eliminate all limits and make it $1 million, or if they said, you're not spending, we don't like you, you were not spending $1, you could give them some flexibility without unduly constraining them by, saying, just for example, whatever the Ohio Revised Code is, but commission could have it or double it, for example.
Yeah, well, don't forget they are elected and subject to recall.
Sure.
So I don't think the voters of Sandusky would allow it to go too far, but
That takes time, though. It was an ad absurdum argument, I confess, but, you get my point.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Schwank.
In my opinion, there's a reason why that section is in our charter, because residents want to see where their money's being spent. And if we take this out of the charter altogether, we open up the opportunity, like Mr. Zuloff said, for the city commission to say, well, this year we're going to set it at 800,000. Next year we're going to set it at $1 million. So one way or another, I think that this needs to stay in the charter. If we change the dollar amount, that's fine, but it needs to stay in the charter. It's our charter. It's the residents' charter. It's not here for the city commission. It's here for them to follow, but it's our charter.
that is all very true. The only thing I'll say, there are other ways to find out how the city is spending its money other than observing city commission meetings. We are subject to public records law. Someone wants to know how much we spent on what, they have to they can make a public records request, and many do.
And one last thing, I mean, this amount was set 25 years ago, and look how hard it's been to change it. So which makes me, if we set an amount again, it's going to be outdated, and they're going to go through the same process.
Good point.
Madam Chair, just let me make it a point of order. Why don't we propose something? Why don't we make a motion to make a change? And talk about it and see if it goes anywhere, because right now we're just having an academic discussion to no end.
So
Does somebody have a proposal?
we could do that. I personally would prefer to revisit this particular item within the context of our other financial considerations that we've talked about, and with Ms. Reeder here to explain to us the impact financially to the city. People would prefer to dig in now. That's the committee's pleasure, but hearing a motion if we need one, or revisit at a future meeting.
Madam Chair, I'm moving to bring it up at a further future meeting. I think we have resources that are coming in to speak about it, aren't we?
So yes.
I would rather discuss it at a later date.
Okay.
I second.
Who's the second?
She said,
Jennifer. She said who seconded.
I didn't hear you, sir.
All in favor of revisiting at a future meeting?
Aye.
Seconded.
Any opposed?
Sorry.
Mr. Schwanger?
Do we have anybody coming in next week, like the finance director, the police chief?
all I need is direction from you guys, and
Engineer?
we'll have whoever you want here at the next meeting.
So yes, that's a good point. That, coming full circle, who do we need here for what discussions? What would be helpful to you as a committee?
Those three.
Finance, engineer,
And police chief.
and chief.
Madam President, may I point out, in past meetings, I noticed that there were several documents they requested, so that's something you guys could think about too. Like, do you want to know how much it costs for something to go to ballot?
Yes.
That is a report that our finance director could bring. Would you like to know how much is spent from one fund? Different reports like that, those can be compiled and brought to you as well, just letting you know.
Thank you. So looking at this document, why don't we, in some ways, move in order to be sure we've covered what you all at least know you need now. These first two items we covered today to revisit. The next four, at least in my recollections of our meeting, they were kind of the potpourri of things that we dug into. Are there any resources that we know of now, whether that's visiting staff members or reports that you'd like to request at this time for those discussion items? Not to say it can't happen later, but that you know of now.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is it a possibility if we have someone come in from a local community that has the ward system? To talk about that a little bit, about how it's working out, if there's any difficulties. There are a number of local communities, Bellevue, Norwalk, Port Clinton, Willard. They have wards and at large.
Can take that under consideration, and I assume you mean that for sections 2, 3, 5, 45?
Yeah.
Okay. Sections 13, 14, 16. I assume this finance director would be helpful for those discussions. And obviously, we have great resources here with John and Mr. Hastings and Mr. Orzak. Any reports, education that we anticipate needing for those items? Okay. I believe we've somewhat discuss sections 25, 41, and 43, and who we'd like to have present and what might be helpful. Anything further that we know of at this time? And then sections 27, 28, 29, police chief, I heard. And it might take everyone some time to go back and reread these sections, so if you have additional requests for resources after we leave tonight and prepare for the next meeting, certainly let me know. Otherwise, my intention would be to essentially select one or two of these groupings for our next meeting so that you can come anticipating that that would be what we focus on for the discussion.
Madam Chair, on the section relating to the ward system, can we also ask the law director to kind of review to see if there's anything in the Ohio Revised Code that gives kind of guidance or information that might be beneficial in regards to when ward systems have been typically used or when at-large systems have been typically used?
Well, yeah, all I can tell you is that there are defaults. When the city reaches a certain size, and Sandusky is that size, the Ohio Revised Code provides for wards. In cities like Cleveland, Cleveland uses a ward system. City of Beechwood, where I was from, it's certainly large enough to have wards, but it's decided to have at-large council members rather than.
And maybe if there's recommendations that are out there in terms of population size, how many commissioners there may be based on population size of a community?
Yeah, that, again, it's not so much a recommendation as, look, folks, if you don't want to do a charter, this is what it's going to be, based on your size. The city of Cleveland passed a charter provision, an interesting one, that every time a census is published, so every 10 years, the number of city councilmen is dependent on the population of the city. There's a formula for determining that, which would then require the wards to all be redrawn. You have fewer or more wards.
Madam Chair, as it relates to wards, do I have a recollection that the last time it hit the ballot, the proposal was to have 4 wards, each providing 1 commissioner, and that the balance of the 7 be at large?
Yeah, there was a provision, I don't have it right here in front of me. Right, you're right, 3 and then 4 wards, 3 at large, 4 wards. And that was defeated
Handily.
67%. Voted against it.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Schwann?
to follow up on Mr. Miller's question, that ballot issue was a citizen-led ballot amendment to the charter. And actually, the city commission came out with a very
Yeah, that was a petition.
Yeah, it was a petition,
Right,
a citizen-led ballot issue petition.
right.
And the city commission at that time came out with a very not so favorable letter, which was questionable because the charter says they're just supposed to send out the language or the amendment language, not their own personal opinions. But it's felt throughout the community, that's why it failed, is because the city commission sent out a big, long letter opposed to it. So this time, if we go with that, it would be a committee recommendation.
The commission still has to vote on it.
Correct. Which the city commission, if they follow past precedents, they pretty much go with whatever their committees recommend.
That's not what happens. Last time, 2 of them, right? One of the proposals was not taken up by the city commission.
Okay.
So they will have their say in this. Yeah, I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages to both systems. Cleveland's system has led to a lot of little fiefdoms, as it were. But, but there are advantages to having local representation too.
If I may, Madam Chair, it appears based on, if you're going to go in order or somewhat in order, that I could have the finance director and engineer here at the next meeting. It doesn't appear that you're going to get to the police chief's comments until later on, probably another day. So I don't want him sitting here for a meeting and, wasting his time, not wasting his time, but based on the conversation we're having right now, there's going to be a lot of dialogue at this first meeting with finance stuff and government stuff. So if it's all right with the committee, I'd like the finance director and engineer to be at the next meeting, and then we can bring the police chief in to the meeting after that. That way it flows, and we have staff here that need to answer questions, but I don't think you're going to get the police chief next meeting. Just a suggestion.
I agree.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Schultz?
So who would reach out to a local community that has wards and at large to get maybe one of the council members to come, or the city manager, or whoever the mayor is of that city? They give us a talk on the ward system versus at large.
Yeah, I think we'd want to do some research, because I think it'd be silly to bring someone from Cleveland here.
Oh, no,
I would presume it's-
I said an area.
Yeah, in the
you know,
area, so I don't
because
know.
I don't know what the population of Cleveland is, but we're not
Exactly.
expecting anybody
Exactly.
to come in with 300,000 people.
Exactly.
You
So,
know.
yeah, we want to find someone approximately our size
Correct.
and find, as you say, an example of different kinds of systems. So we'll have to do our research.
I think also it's going to be dependent on, we'll have to do some research too, is a lot of the cities that you brought up have mayor elected form of government in wards, not city manager forms of government. So we'll have to see if we can do apples to apples on that as well, because there's different forms of government, city manager and mayors are totally different than the government,
Yeah, and there's cities like Cleveland Heights, which I'm familiar with, who has changed their system, I think, 3 times in the last 6 years, so.
Perhaps the academic resource who could cover multiple forms of city government might be a better fit.
Yeah, maybe we could get a professor or somebody to talk to us.
Yeah. So,
What's our budget for that?
Madam Chair, as it relates to wards, there must have been a presumption that we know what the 4 wards of the city were, what the boundaries of those were. Is that something that would need to be established if we proposed a ward system? They're not really fixed now. That was just established for that failed petition. And secondly, if they are in basically quadrants of the city and pretty easy to define or relatively uncontroversial to define, I'd be interested to know the geographical distribution of our current commission overlaid on those wards. Understand the,
Yeah, no, I understand. I would not recommend putting the ward boundaries in the charter, because that's so hard to change. If
I'm
anybody's
just looking
familiar
for
with
a way
the
to get
concept of a,
geographical distribution of the current
or
commissioners.
it's more of a process that should be described, like the U.S. Constitution, which was meant as every census, the U.S. Constitution provides that the House districts will be redrawn to reflect the new number of representatives from each state. It does not tell them, this part of Ohio must have set the boundaries. And I think that was for those of us familiar with history, in England, there was the concept of the rotten borough, where when it was first drawn up, had a good population, now there's a population of 3, and they get to elect a member of parliament. So you do want to have a provision in there for, as the city might change, we don't know what it'll change to, an ability to redraw those lines easily.
And I see an inherent danger, especially in this state, maybe about gerrymandering the districts to include some racial profiling or other systems to gerrymander to get an outcome that somebody wants to predict.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Zalar.
Oh, you said the G word, gerrymandering. That's probably the biggest worm in the can that we would be opening. Without taking a position on whether it's a good, Mayor Ward is a good idea or not, it would be a big change, and I don't like making changes. It's been talked about for so long that my question is, what problem are we solving, and how will any change improve the situation? Again, I'm not taking a position on it. I'm just saying, that's questions that have to be asked. We've been talking about Mayor Ward for so long, we may have even forgotten why or what we think the improvement would be, but surely you would need a process for determining where the ward boundaries are, and well, we can just have to look at Ohio and all the controversy and folderol that goes with that. It's just one part of it. Now, maybe it's worth it. I don't know. But as I listen to the discussion, I'm reminded of the aphorism, I guess, of, don't underestimate the ability of a determined group of people to address a problem and make it worse, right? So something to think about, like, what are we trying to fix, and then, what's the best approach to do that? Does anybody have any thoughts? What is the problem we're trying to solve by, if we were to amend our form of government? I'd love to hear it.
The different communities would have a bigger say in what goes on.
For whom?
If we had the ward system, the different communities would have a better say at the commission meeting of what is decided and what we're going to do. One example I can give is MacArthur Park, because I live there. And
Madam Chair, that sounds great. I would wonder if the member would care to expound on how that the mayor ward system would improve the say that voters would have.
I don't understand the question.
I don't understand your question. Do you understand this question? I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking.
I'm asking, the comment was that the reason for doing this would be to give
A voice.
citizens a greater voice, and my question is, that sounds great, please explain how it would give the voters a greater voice.
if the South Side were made a ward and they had their own commissioner about that, they would have, the residents would have a greater say with what goes on in the neighborhood where they live. For example, I'm in MacArthur Park, which is torn up now because of the new sewer system that they're putting in. And I really didn't have a say in, or felt that I had any representation on the commission before you did all this work, before all the streets are torn up and everything is torn up and it's hard to get in there. I didn't have a say, and the neighborhood didn't have a say in what was getting ready to happen. But if I had a ward, if I had a representative on the commission that represented the South Side ward, then all of the people that lived there would have a voice in it, would have had a voice in it, rather than now we just kind of feel like it was dumped on us.
Madam Chair. So it would seem that you don't feel that you could, like, call any one of the 7 commissioners and that none of the 7 commissioners are approachable or have the greater good of the city. I think I see your point, but I'd like to point out that right now you have 7 commissioners that would should be happy to take your call because they all represent you. The moment you go to Mayor Ward, it's like, you're not my ward, here, call the other guy, so just a thought.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Schwanger.
Mr. Zuloff, I can give you another example. In 2018, I believe it was, we had the Neighborhood Initiative Program where we had like 5 different neighborhoods that, the city went into. I live in the West End, and city staff had a meeting there at Margaritaville, and it was well attended by the West End. And what we heard over and over again is that the West End has been lost in the shuffle as far as representation. So the West End, just like the South Side, was in favor of eventually going to a ward system. Now, I keep hearing the word mayor in with your discussion. That's not what I want to discuss when we get to that. I just want to go keep the city manager and just add wards. And also, we have to remember that this year is an election year for city commission. There's 3 seats that are up for reelection in 2025. All of our issues will go to the ballot at the same time. So with the election in 2025 of city commission, that would satisfy the at-large issue. And in 2027 is when the ward system of 4 wards would go into effect. So basically, we have 2 years of either a committee or somebody drawing up the boundaries for that to take effect in 2027. Now, there is a map, and I believe it's up in the Erie County Engineer's Office across the street, from when we had the ward system 50 years ago, maybe. And what happened there is that the ward system passed, and a year later, the city commission decided they didn't want the ward system, so they put it back on the ballot, and it failed. I mean, it passed to go back to at-large. Now, that was 50 years ago.
Well, thank you for the example. That's illuminating. I would still look forward to a motion of specifically what to do.
Good introduction to things on the minds of the committee. Bringing us back to today and rounding out today's agenda. Any other comments on upcoming meetings or other items of new business?
I have a question. Do we think that we're going to need another meeting in here between, or do we think that we're going to be able to possibly get through? Because it looks like we're doing like every 2 weeks. I mean, do we want to add another meeting just in case? Or just wait for another meeting or 2 meetings to see where we're at?
Is that a motion?
I'm not sure.
I'm not following.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The number of meetings is prescribed. So I'm not sure the committee has I believe the commission could add a meeting.
I thought in 2020 that this committee added a meeting. I don't think it's in the charter that we can only
It's
meet.
not in the charter.
Okay. So this committee could decide.
We'll have to look into that.
Okay.
You have to realize we're on a timetable. We have to be done to get the legislation to the Board of Education for it to be put on the ballot.
Board of Elections.
So that's why everything that you see here, it's all on a time frame. So if we meet by June, July legislation, it goes to commission to vote, gives law time to write up the legislation, which has to be to the Board of Election by the first week of August.
And that's my point, is that do we want to add another meeting in between here just to be safe?
I would have to even look at what's available, because the dates I gave you were the dates that were available at that time. That's why it's so important that we stay on schedule.
And we need notice.
Pardon?
We need notice. If we're going to have an additional meeting, How many days?
Oh, it's not very many days. I mean, we
Right.
can do it very quickly, but
I'm just pointing out that you can't do it tomorrow. I don't remember how many.
you can't do it.
Well, and you have to have a majority vote from here to go forward.
Madam Chair?
I think we aren't yet in crisis in terms of time, myself. Certainly, if someone wants to make a motion now to add another meeting, we could, but we could also see how the next couple discussions go. That would be my preference.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a correction on the paper here. It says our next meeting is on April 27th, but that is a Sunday, so I think it's the 25th.
I have April
21st.
And it's a Monday, not Thursday.
That's what I have, the 21st.
The 21st.
April 21st is our next meeting, and the Monday is correct. I put my phone away.
Monday, yep.
Okay. You'll, of course, receive the agenda ahead of time, but we will look to start tackling these sections of items to revisit from the charter. Part of this will depend on who we might be able to consult as a resource in regards to form of city government. But look for your agenda and welcome comments in between. Any other items of new business?
Move to adjourn.
Very good.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Not being Grand Cayman Islands, so sorry.
Skeptical as to.
Always went in the air on that day.
Your little guy.
Watching it because
Take them anywhere to celebrate, or what do they do?
Three little ones.